It is past midnight in the summer of 1725, in a Serbian village called Kisilova, and a girl is dying. She has no fever and no wound and no sickness any healer can name. She has been dying for exactly 1 day, and as the priest leans close to hear her confession, she uses the last air in her lungs to say a name: Peter Blagojević. And every person in that room goes still, because Peter Blagojević has been in the churchyard for 10 weeks. She is not the first. 9 people have died in 8 days, all of them healthy, all of them struck down by a sickness that takes exactly 24 hours, and every single one of them, in their final hour, said the same thing. The dead man comes at night. He lies on their chest. He presses down until the breath will not come, and in the morning they begin to die. 9 deathbeds, 9 households, 1 name. Then his widow leaves the village. She tells her neighbors before she goes, and what she tells them is worse than anything the dying have said. Her husband came to the house after his burial. He stood in the doorway of the home they had shared, and he asked her quite calmly for his shoes. She gave the dead man his shoes, and then she packed what she could carry and fled to another village, because whatever wore her husband's face was going to come back. What happens next is the reason we know any of this, because Kisilova sits on the military frontier of the Habsburg Empire, and everything on the frontier gets written down. The villagers send for the imperial administrator of the district, a man named Frombald, and for the priest of Gradiska, and they make a demand that no official manual has an answer for. Open the grave, examine the body, and if he is what we say he is, let us destroy him, or by nightfall tomorrow this village will stand empty, because we will not spend another night beside that churchyard. Frombald tries to slow them down. He tells them permission must come from Belgrade, that there are procedures, that graves are not opened on a rumor. The villagers answer that by the time a letter reaches Belgrade, every one of them may be dead, and Frombald looks at their faces and understands that this is not a negotiation. So an imperial official of the Austrian crown walks to the churchyard of Kisilova with a priest at his side and the whole village behind him to dig up a man 10 weeks dead. It is going to be in his official report, all of it. They open the earth and lift the lid, and Frombald records what he sees in the flat, careful language of a man who does not expect to be believed. The smell is missing. 10 weeks in a summer grave, and there is no smell of death at all, except the faintest trace at the nose. The body is whole, the flesh is firm. The old skin has peeled away, and underneath it is new skin, pale and fresh, and the old nails have fallen from his fingers, and new nails have grown in their place. His hair and his beard have grown, and in his open mouth, wet on his lips and teeth, there is fresh red blood. Frombald writes that the villagers grew more outraged than distressed, that they saw not a corpse, but a well-fed thing, interrupted. The people of Kisilova do not wait for Belgrade. They sharpen a stake, and Frombald stands there, the lawful representative of the emperor, and watches, and does not stop them. And later he will beg his superiors in writing not to blame him for it. They set the point against the dead man's chest and drive it through, and the body answers. Completely fresh blood pours from the wound, and it comes from the ears and from the mouth, as if the heart it pierced were full. And there were other signs on the body, signs that Frombald calls wild, and declines, in an official document of the Austrian Empire, to describe. Then they burn Peter Blagojević to ash, and the dying in Kisilova stops. Frombald's report travels up the imperial chain to Vienna, where a newspaper prints it, word for word, in July of 1725. It is the first vampire case in history documented by a government official who stood in the grave and signed his name. It will not be the last, because 7 years later, and 1 province over, it happens again, and this time it is worse, and this time the empire sends soldiers. The village is called Medvedja, and its trouble begins with a soldier named Arnold Paole. Paole has served in the army in Turkish Serbia and come home strange, and he tells people why. Down south, he says, a vampire plagued him, and he did the only thing that is supposed to work. He found the creature's grave, and he ate earth from it, and he smeared himself with its blood. He tells his neighbors he cured himself. Then, in the autumn of 1727, Arnold Paole falls from a hay wagon and breaks his neck, and within a month of his burial, 4 people in Medvedja tell anyone who will listen that Paole comes to them in the night. All 4 are dead within days. The village does what frontier villages have learned to do. 40 days after his burial, they open Arnold Paole's grave, and it is Kisilova again. The body undecayed, new skin, new nails, fresh blood at the eyes, the ears, the nose, the mouth, the shirt and the coffin sheet soaked with it. They drive a stake through his heart, and witnesses swear that Arnold Paole groaned aloud when it went in, and bled as the living bleed. They burn him, and they burn his 4 victims too, because the plague is supposed to pass to those the vampire kills, and then Medvedja is quiet for 5 years. In the winter of 1731, the dying begins again, and this time there is no Arnold Paole to blame. 17 people die in 3 months. Some take a fever and last a few days, and some go to bed healthy and are dead by morning. And the dead include the young and the strong, a girl of 20 named Stana, an old woman named Milica, men in their prime. And the terrified survivors work out the chain. Paole had not only fed on people, he had fed on cattle, and the cattle had been eaten, and everyone who ate that meat now lies under suspicion in the churchyard, seeding it. The village prepares to abandon everything, the houses, the fields, the graves, and vanish. And that is a problem the empire cannot ignore, because an emptied frontier is a broken frontier. So Vienna sends a Contagion physician who finds no plague, no bad water, no famine, nothing, and villagers who tell him to his face what is killing them. And then, in the first days of January 1732, the empire sends Johann Fluckinger, regimental field surgeon, with military officers beside him, under orders to settle the matter with instruments and ink. On the 7th of January, in frozen ground, with the village assembled and the old men of the militia standing witness, the army of the Austrian Empire begins opening the graves of Medvedja. Not one grave, 13. And a field surgeon starts performing autopsies on vampires. Fluckinger works grave by grave and writes down each body like a patient. And the pattern splits the churchyard in 2. Some of the dead, buried the same winter, in the same earth, are exactly what dead bodies should be, collapsed and consumed, and he writes them down and closes them up. But the others, Stana, dead 2 months, complete and undecayed, with fresh blood in her chest. The old woman Milica, dead 3 months, whom the surgeons open to find the vessels full of liquid blood, the organs fresh, the whole condition, and this is the phrase Fluckinger sets down in an official military document, the whole condition vampiric, body after body, skin peeled to fresh skin beneath, old nails gone, new nails grown, blood pooling wet in the chest of a woman 12 weeks buried in frozen ground. The surgeons cut and measure and record, and what they are writing, in the plainest clinical German, is that half this churchyard has not agreed to die. When it is done, the condemned are handed to the local people who know the procedure. The heads are struck off, the bodies burned to ash, and the ash is carried to the river Morava and thrown in so that nothing of them can ever be buried again. Fluckinger writes his report, and he calls it Visum et Repertum, seen and discovered, and he signs it. And then officers of the imperial army sign it too, swearing that what it describes is what was seen. That document reaches Vienna in weeks. Within months, it is reprinted across Europe, debated in universities, read aloud in the salons of Paris, and a Serbian word rides along inside it into French and English, and every language that has it still. Vampire. The whole modern idea of the vampire, every pale count and every stake through every heart, begins as paperwork, in a Serbian churchyard, in January 1732. Here is what the empire's own surgeons could not know, standing in that frozen churchyard, because the knowledge was still a century away. A body in cold earth decays slowly, and unevenly, and a grave is not a fair test of death. The bloom of the skin peels, and what shows beneath looks new. Nails loosen and fall, and the beds beneath look like fresh growth. The body's own gases swell the chest and force blood, still liquid, up into the throat and the mouth, so a corpse can lie in its coffin with wet red lips. And when a stake is driven through a chest swollen tight with gas, the body can vent it past the vocal cords, and the grave can groan. Every sign in Frombald's report, every sign in Fluckinger's, is a body doing exactly what bodies do, witnessed by men who had simply never watched it happen, because no one digs up the dead to check. But 9 people in Kisilova still died in 8 days, with the same name on their lips. 17 still died in Medvedja in a single winter. Fear kills and contagion kills, and on a frontier crowded with both, the dead made a better story than either. The reports are still there, in the archives in Vienna, in ink, with signatures and ranks, seen and discovered. And on the 7th of January, in Medvedja, when the first spade went into the frozen ground, every man watching believed the thing below it might open its eyes. The truly frightening part is that if you had stood there in the cold and looked down at what lay whole and red mouthed in that coffin, so would you.